Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating piece of source material that traces the 2,000-year history of the Israel-Palestine conflict. Our goal here isn't to take sides, but just to unpack the specific narrative laid out in this source. We're going to see exactly how it frames the incredibly complex geopolitical landscape we're dealing with today. To really understand the source's claims about modern alliances, we've got to logically follow its massive chronological timeline. So, we'll be moving through 6 distinct eras: ancient exiles and Islamic rule, the shift to European banking, the birth of Zionism, world wars and demographics, the UN Partition Plan, and finally, 1948 and its aftermath. Let's jump right in. Kicking things off with Section 1, Ancient Exiles and Islamic Rule. The narrative actually begins 2 millennia ago, under the oppressive rule of the Roman Empire. Following religious tensions involving Jesus, the Romans brutally exiled the Jewish population from Palestine. Fast forward about 500 years to the 600s, and the narrative shifts to Islamic rule under Caliph Umar. The source describes this as a time of peaceful coexistence where Jews were welcomed back into Jerusalem. But as you know, history is rarely peaceful for long. By the 1000s, this era was shattered by the violent crusades initiated by Pope Urban, which targeted both Muslims and Jews. Eventually, a final Muslim reconquest by Salahuddin in the 1100s restored order. Now, what's really fascinating here is the geographic bridge from the Middle East over to Europe, specifically via Spain, or Andalusia. The source notes that 800 years of Muslim rule in Spain ultimately ended with a Christian conquest. This forced both Jewish and Muslim populations to either convert or flee, and it was actually the Ottoman Empire's Sultan Bayezid who offered refuge to these displaced groups. Moving on to Section 2, Shift to European Banking. Following the discovery of the Americas, global economic power began shifting drastically as Jewish populations migrated toward Europe. But how exactly did this shift happen? Well, the text explicitly debunks all those wild internet myths you've probably stumbled across. No black magic, no secret Illuminati meetings. Instead, it grounds its explanation entirely in historical European property laws and strategic business practices. The source lays out a very specific 3-step chain of events to explain the rise of Jewish banking in Europe. First up, European Christians enacted laws barring Jewish populations from owning land. Step 2, this exclusion essentially forced them into trading, business, and accumulating cash. And third, because the Christian elite had all their wealth tied up in land, making them super cash poor, Jewish merchants stepped in to lend them money with interest, filling a massive void in the economy. And according to this account, the ultimate beneficiaries of this brand new banking system were the Rothschilds. The source asserts they amassed unimaginable wealth by creating the world's first decentralized international bank. They did this by strategically sending 5 sons to major European capitals. The claim here is that they literally funded the Spanish, French, and British empires, and even dictated the outcomes of major wars, like explicitly helping the British Empire defeat Napoleon. All of this acquired wealth and influence sets the stage for Section 3, the birth of Zionism. The source defines Zionism as a movement initiated specifically to establish a Jewish state in Palestine. Backed heavily by Rothschild funding, the initial strategy involved about 4,000 individuals secretly shifting to the region. They started buying up completely barren lands, like the area that's now modern-day Tel Aviv, paying triple the market price to poor Arab landowners. But European money wasn't the only driving force here. A huge secondary factor was evangelical Christian support over in America. The source claims this was sparked by a wildly popular book titled Jesus is Coming. Apparently, this book convinced millions of American Christians that Jesus would only return to Earth if Israel became an independent state, which secured a massive wave of public backing in the US. So, you've got this incredible public and financial momentum leading right up to the first Zionist Congress in Switzerland. The text recounts a rather dramatic prediction by Zionist leader Theodor Herzl. He told the attendees, "Today from here, I know you will laugh, but 50 years later, there will be a Jewish state." The source really hammers this point home, because that bold prediction ended up coming true exactly 50 years later, literally down to the day. But getting to that 50-year mark required immense global turbulence. Let's look at Section 4, World Wars and Demographics. After the Ottoman Sultan Abdul Hamid outright refused to sell Palestine to the Zionists, the narrative states they had to pivot, turning to the British Empire and global warfare to achieve their objective. World War I led directly to the 1917 Balfour Declaration, where the British Empire officially promised a Jewish state in Palestine in exchange for support during the war. Then, of course, came the catastrophic rise of Adolf Hitler in the 1930s. He capitalized on German resentment over shifting World War I alliances, which led to intense persecution and a massive migration of European Jews fleeing for their lives as World War II came to an end in 1945. The demographic impact of those two world wars was absolutely staggering. During World War I, the Jewish population in Palestine sat at just 10%, but by the end of World War II, driven entirely by the horrors taking place in Europe and mass migration, that number spiked dramatically to over 30%. That sudden population boom brings us directly to Section 5, the UN Partition Plan. After World War II, a severely weakened British Empire basically handed the volatile Palestinian issue over to the newly formed United Nations. The population to land disparity in the 1947 Partition Plan is definitely a striking part of this source's narrative. It impartially relays a sharp criticism here, noting that the UN decided to give the 33% Jewish population the majority of the land, while the 66% Muslim majority population was given the minority. The text explicitly labels this as a highly unfair and illogical decision. Naturally, the immediate reaction to this plan is crucial to the narrative. The Palestinian Muslim Committee, led by Grand Mufti Amin al-Husseini, flatly rejected the UN's division of the land, impartially reporting the facts presented in the source material. It's also specifically noted that Husseini had highly controversial prior ties to Adolf Hitler during World War II, which obviously further complicated the geopolitical optics of the time. All of this historical tension inevitably boiled over. Let's move to our final era, Section 6, 1948, and the aftermath. This is the absolute climax of the historical narrative. Following the Muslim rejection of the UN plan, David Ben-Gurion officially declared the independence of Israel. This was the exact moment that fulfilled Theodore Herzl's 50-year prediction. The account emphasizes the rapid validation by global superpowers, pointing out that the United States recognized the new state in just 11 minutes. Israel then went on to defeat 5 attacking Arab nations in the ensuing war. But as the source points out, this victory came with a stark human fallout. The numbers from the 1948 conflict show the displacement of 800,000 Palestinians. Almost simultaneously, 700,000 Jewish immigrants arrived to fill the empty homes and towns. This massive demographic shift pushed the overall Jewish population to between 60 and 70%. The 2,000-year history wraps up with some highly charged claims regarding the military strategy behind this demographic shift. It states that 500 villages were completely destroyed and that extreme tactics, including the poisoning of wells, were used to ensure permanent displacement. The narrative concludes by asserting that this wasn't just a one-off event in 1948, but rather an ongoing strategy utilized to maintain a demographically secure Zionist state. According to the source material we've explored today, this strategy of displacement isn't just ancient history. It continues right into the present. But the big question I want to leave you with is this: how does tracing this specific 2,000-year narrative, from Roman exiles to European property laws, all the way to world wars and partition plans, change or challenge the way you view today's incredibly complex geopolitical alliances? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the history behind the headlines, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.